Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right. Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today. Welcome aboard, Michael Rudden, Navy Q. Paul Fleming, ATL, checking in. Welcome aboard, ATL. How's everybody doing today? I trust all is fine with my peeps. Today we have a great guest that we're going to come to in the second part of the show. This guy is going to blow your mind because of the way he thinks it. He brings things to the forefront that many people don't like to talk about, but there are things that we have to talk about, that we need to talk about. Anyhow, I imagine you saw the press conferences, dueling press conferences, mostly the one from Donald Trump, who says, oh, all those things that people are saying about me, they're lying. And then he goes and he lies about Kamala Harris when he goes out and he says, she is telling people to do the unscientific thing and not take the vaccine because it's political. Of course, he is trying to get the vaccine out. Why? Because he thinks that is going to help him. He thinks by telling people, I am rushing the vaccine to you, that somehow that's going to make it better, instead of making him look irresponsible by throwing something on the market that may not have necessarily been tested correctly. So before we get started, I want to ask all the people that are listening, all my brothers and my sisters that are listening right now, please, my brothers and sisters, please share this program on your wall, on your Twitter, on your Tumblr, on your everything right now. Why do we need that? Because we break down some of the news in a fashion that cannot be done on the mainstream media. Why not? Because that they're bad people or they don't want to. It's because, again, they are paid for by the corporate media, and the corporate media only gives you X amount of leeway to say certain things, because you cannot say or you cannot do anything that's going to put in jeopardy our corporate state. So just remember that one of the things that independent media does is we make sure to tell the entire story. And why do we tell the entire story? So that you can make an intelligent choice when you're going out there to vote. By the way, when we tell an intelligent story, when we tell an accurate story, when we tell a true story, remember some of that comes from what I call the family. And who is the family? All of us. Because all of us have a bit of information. And what do we do together? We aggregate information for our learning in totality. Don't sit down and take it from the top and believe that because that is the best reporter at MSNBC that they have all the answers. They don't. Do I have all the answers? Hell no. Do you have all the answers? No. But together, the family, what they like to call there's a word that we use in social media, the crowd in general gets it right. If you take a look at certain programs on TV, you know, when you have they go ahead and they say, do you want to ask the audience? Notice how most of the times when they ask the audience to give the answer, most of the times the totality of the intelligence of the audience is generally much better than the one. That's the case because, again, none of us are geniuses. None of us know everything. Anyhow, let's go ahead and get started with the program. What is the program going to be about today? The program today, journalist exposes racism in the Latino community. I heard that the politically correct thing to say is the Latinx community. I'm going to tell you something. I know about all of that. But I'm going to tell you something else. If we go into the barrios, okay? I don't know how many people use the word the Latinx community. You know, we sort of, that's sort of an academia kind of thing. Yo soy Latino, así que yo sé eso también. All right. So let's get that straight. You can use it interchangeably. I won't hold it against you for using Latinx or Latino because, like I said, a lot of that Latinx thing came from the, well, we can't give gender. You know, Spanish, unlike English, is a gendered language. What that means is all our words have gender. And Latinos is generally a masculine gender. But what they forget to tell you is in any language, a word can be used in a genderless fashion. A guy can be a woman or a man. But when we're speaking about certain things, we talk about the guy, or there are a lot of other words that are ambiguous in that kind of way. But anyhow, let me get to the point. Journalist exposes racism in the Latino community. Trump's failed presidency and vote early, folks. Journalist Arturo Dominguez challenged the white Latino to much pushback. He got a lot of pushback for the article. I didn't have the time to put the link to the article right now. When I'm done with the program today, I'll put the link to the articles and probably a couple of excerpts from the article in the blog itself. I'll do that later. Anyhow, the failed Trump presidency is getting exposed daily. We must vote early, folks. Arturo Dominguez did not pull any punches in this article where he exposed a subtle racism problem within the Latino community. Trump continuously exposed and a derelict failed president. Typo in my blog. I got to fix that as well. I was rushing the blog because, I was on. Let me tell you a little secret, folks. You know, when you run independent media, you have your own little independent domain here. You do everything. You build your website. You cut your videos. You write your book. You write your blogs. You do everything. Well, you also do the technical behind the scenes of your website. The website may look pretty on the outside and all. There's a hell of a lot of stuff going on in the background. And when something doesn't work and you have to get it to the back end for whoever your provider is, takes a lot of time. I was on the phone with these guys for 2.5 hours. So forgive me that I didn't have all my T's crossed, all my I's dotted. We must vote at all costs. Anyhow, let's start the program with, here's what I want to start. Chris Hayes had a piece a few days ago, and I meant to play it on Friday. I meant to play it on, I think, Thursday as well. Didn't have the time, didn't have the space within what we wanted to cover to do it. Well, I got the chance to be able to do it today, and I want you to listen to this. I want to listen to it very intensely. But beforehand, how rude am I to not have wished every single worker in America Happy Labor Day? It's a shame that we actually support Labor Day different from the rest of the world, which is May 1st. But it's okay. At least we're still giving Labor Day to our families, our friends, and everybody else. Happy Labor Day. We thank you all for what you provide to our society, because if it weren't for our very hard laborers, we wouldn't be the country that we are today. So thank you so kindly. Here is Chris Hayes with what I wanted to talk to you guys about. Check it out. What Chris Hayes points out, an inconvenient truth that take a whole lot of folks who think that Trump is doing fairly well should give them a second thought. Check this out.
Fundamental conceit was that we are falling behind, that we are the laughingstock of the world, and so I, Donald Trump, will restore us to preeminence, to our rightful place in the world. Make America great again. The core of that entire premise was a con. The Trump campaign has now admitted as much when they coined the re-election slogan, Make America Great Again, Again. Might be the single biggest admission of failure in the history of American presidential politics. At first, the idea America was in utter shambles in 2016 was a ridiculous premise. But now we are precisely what Donald Trump said we were before he was elected. It was the ultimate act of projection, indeed of prediction. He said we were the laughingstock of the world, and then he made us into the laughingstock of the world. The coronavirus hit the whole world. Back in the early days of the pandemic, in March and April, sitting here talking to you at this camera, we all struggled together. There was this incredible sense of international solidarity. I mean, we watched China shut down, right, when the outbreak started. read the stories of the crazy quarantines, and we saw the images of the empty streets in Italy, and then in France, and in Spain, and then it came here, first to the West Coast, and then to New York City. At one point, we had nearly 4 billion people under lockdown across the world. The empty plazas and the stores and schools, we were all in it together. 6 months later, that is no longer the case. Almost everyone else has moved on. This is Wuhan, China, where it all started, at a water park. These are the Spanish Steps in Italy. This is Bondi Beach in Australia, and a rugby match in New Zealand. People are going to concerts and sporting events. They're going to weddings and funerals. Most of these countries have basically beaten the virus, but not here. In the United States, our leadership failed. Donald Trump failed. The rest of the world was able to follow the advice of public health experts and suppress the virus. They are still fighting outbreaks, it's true, but the scale of those outbreaks pale in comparison to what we see on a daily basis in this country. If you pay the price of vigilance and self-control, you reap the reward of freedom. We went through all the trouble and all the costs and all the disruption of closing down the country, the misery, the trauma, the dislocation, the economic pain. And once you go through all that, you have to push through those last few weeks of shutdown that seem excessive to really smother the virus, because you only want to have to do that once. And the places that did all that, they get to enjoy the benefits now. They're all moving on with their lives, and we are not. One of the biggest ways this hits home is that they are sending their kids to school, and we are not. Chinese state media released these images of kids returning to school in Wuhan, basically taunting the U.S. for our failures to do the same. Look at you, Americans. This thing started here, and we dealt with it. Now look where we are, and look where you are. Instead of any kind of plan, coordinated public health response, Donald Trump just stamped his feet. He demanded that schools open. And his new coronavirus advisor, Scott Atlas, talked about getting calls from around the world wondering why American kids aren't going to school.
Look at what's happened in the other countries. The UK, Canada, Sweden, Switzerland, Germany, Denmark, the Netherlands, France, Italy, Spain, they are all opening schools. We here in the United States, I have people all over the world calling me and emailing me, what is going on here?
That's exactly right. Yeah, they're opening schools. They didn't have an enormous second wave like we did that freaked everybody out. They don't have 200,000 nearly deaths. They don't have 40,000 cases a day in perpetuity as their low-level plateau. The big reason people feel it's not safe for kids to go to school or to go work in those schools for the teachers is that the guy you work for, Scott Atlas, messed everything up so much.
Exactly right. And that is the point. We are going through the same things over and over, and we have these Republican governors as well doing the same thing over and over again, trying to open up before they should, doing all these things before they should, instead of getting the virus under control and then moving on with testing and making sure they can knock it out wherever it raises its head. That is why we are supposed to be the advanced country. But more than anything else right now, we're the laughing stock of the world. Welcome aboard, Deborah, my good friend. How you doing, Deborah? Thank you for being here live with us this time around. I hope to see you live a few more times. Anyhow, folks, check out some of the stuff that Michael Rudnin is writing there, because I think those are some important points we have to realize. I'm going to go ahead and read a couple of them out. The rest of the world isn't laughing at us over coronavirus. They're watching in pity as our people are the only nation without universal health care. And now we're number one in coronavirus cases, hospitalizations, and death. And for those who are going to remain sick, folks, because that stuff leaves some damaging effects on many people's bodies. Think about it. They'll have pre-existing conditions now. You go ahead. Remember, coronavirus doesn't know the difference between Republican or Democrat. So let's go ahead. if you attempt to re-elect Donald Trump, and if miraculously he comes out of this, his failure, and wins, remember that what he's proposing will ensure that your health care is gone. It will ensure not only that your health care is gone, it'll ensure that your wealth, your kids' wealth is gone. Why? Because to take care of your health care, no more pre-existing conditions. It's out of pocket now, baby. So don't think that this election is not going to matter. For some of you who say, well, I particularly don't like Biden. The truth of the matter is, I don't particularly like Biden, but it's not a matter of me liking Biden or you liking Biden. It's about you liking or loving your fellow man. And for those fellow people, the fellow persons, and for those persons who got hurt from the coronavirus and will not have insurance, are you going to make sure that you support the person who support policies to ensure that they don't go bankrupt? That you are going to support policies? Again, coronavirus does not know the difference between Republican, Democrat, Independent, Anarchist, or anything else. So therefore, it is incumbent on you, if you care about others, including if you care about yourself, not to put somebody in office who is going to ensure that the corporatocracy, the evil that is the insurance companies, are able to deny you the health care that you deserve. Don't be fooled. Do not be fooled. Karen M. Torino, welcome aboard. Norman Reynolds, welcome aboard. Ms. Torino, I'm not sure what you're talking about. Liar, pants on fire. But please, if you'd like to give us a call, you can talk to us about that. I would love to talk to you. In fact, I would suggest, I don't love what I see being done to our cities by those who, by the way, they're not pushing racial divide. Those protests are multi-racial for people who realize that black people who look like me and otherwise, and Latinos, brown people, are really abused by the corporate structure, are abused by the police structure, etc. You won't see it as, I imagine, Karen Torino, you may be a white woman. I don't know, but it sounds, your image on the screen looks that way. So here's the deal, what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to ask you for one short minute to go ahead and be somewhat empathetic and make the assumption that you're coming to the discussion with a blank slate. And then go get yourself talk to me. I can talk to you one-on-one. Talk to me, or talk to somebody else who has gone through the tribulations solely because of their pigmentation. Don't just assume. Talk to the people that say they're directly affected, Ms. Torino, and then ask some questions. And let's have a dialogue. And by the way, I wrote a book. Check out my book. It's called It's Worth It, How to Talk to Your Right-Wing Relatives, Friends, and Neighbors. And its intent is not to be condescending. Its intent, actually, if you read my book, will be to say, I don't blame you for the thought process that you go through when you make a statement like, I don't love what I see being done to our cities by those continuing to push the racial divide. You really believe that. I know in your honest mind, you really believe that. But let's have a discussion as why do you believe that? What kind of information was placed in your mind through your sources of information to give you that thought? I bet we sit down and talk about what somebody like myself go through, and something like Mr. Norman Reynolds in this place and others go through. You will then sit down and say, wow, I didn't really see that. I am sure when you saw that man's knees on that guy's neck, I am sure you had a visceral reaction to that. But you know what? The protest that comes after, if your reaction to the protest is more visceral than your reaction to that knee on the neck, and that knee in the neck is not only literal, but in many times with people of color, it's also literal and figuratively. So please, if you want to have a discussion, let's do it peacefully, civilly, and talk it the way it needs to be spoken. Anyhow, let's go to what former FBI, I don't know how to say his name right, so I'm going to just let my thing talk about it. Well, Mr. President, it seems like the all-out press is out on you. It seems like the travesty that you have been to the country is coming on to haunt you. Former FBI agent Peter Strzok decided to write a book, and it seems like you didn't come out all too well in the book. Let's listen to this and then take it on the other side.
There is no more urgent election in our lifetime from a counterintelligence perspective.
And that's why, less than 2 months before Election Day, former FBI agent Peter Strzok is pulling no punches.
Without exaggeration, President Trump's counterintelligence vulnerabilities are exponentially greater than any president in modern history.
So do you think the president is a national security threat?
I do.
Strzok helped open the investigation into the Trump campaign in 2016. So involved, he named the operation Crossfire Hurricane after a Rolling Stones song stuck in his head. And he's one of the agent's former national security advisor, Michael Flynn, pleaded guilty to lying to about his conversations with the then Russian ambassador to the U.S., charges the Justice Department recently moved to dismiss.
I think that's a miscarriage of justice.
What do you attribute it to, then?
Political pressure, improper political pressure from the White House and the Department of Justice.
Now, Strzok is still worried about unfinished business.
Do you believe the Russians still have hidden leverage over the president?
I think that's a fair assumption.
Why?
I think when you look at President Trump and the efforts he has taken to fighting tooth and nail to prevent, for instance, the release of his tax records, there is something there that he doesn't want out.
Strzok, a key part of the team investigating Hillary Clinton's use of a private email server, also worked briefly with the special counsel in 2017, looking into the Trump campaign's ties with Russia before being removed and later fired. His dismissal coming after the discovery of text messages he exchanged with a coworker with whom he was having an affair. Texts like, F Trump, Hillary should win 100 million to 0, and about a possible Trump victory, we'll stop it, giving ammunition to the president and his supporters who believed the FBI was working against President Trump. A watchdog report later found no political bias motivating the investigation.
These outside independent people who have looked at it have concluded that this was entirely proper.
To some people in this country, your credibility is simply and frankly shot. They just don't believe what you're saying because of some of your past actions, the text message, etc. Why should those people believe you now that you're coming out and sounding the alarm bell about President Trump?
Listen to what I have to say. I guarantee you, whoever you are in America, you are not going to step away from that without a deep, deep concern about our president's interactions and a relationship with the government of Russia.
In a statement, the White House calls Strzok's book utter nonsense, adding, quote, he is now trying to make money selling the same lies for which he was fired.
Strzok and Page, the lovers, the great lovers.
The president himself has described Strzok as a minion, a sick loser, and accused him of treason.
It is angering. It promotes fear. It is fearful. The second thing is it is enormously frustrating because it's not the truth. And it strips away your identity, at least with whatever portion of the population is listening and believing the president.
You had to have known that writing this book would reignite those attacks. So why do it?
Because it's important to get the message out.
You are ringing the alarm bell.
I am.
You think people will listen to it?
I hope so. I think so.
Even with you as the messenger?
Absolutely.
Now ask yourself a simple question. The Russians had bounties on American soldiers in Russia. The president has not really spoken anything sensible about it. The president has not contacted Vladimir Putin to ask, how could you do that to our own soldiers? Do you wonder if there's something they have over his head? They buzzed a caravan recently overseas. Crickets came out of the president's mouth, nothing about it. And we now find out that the president doesn't even care too much. Well, we didn't just find it out. We just got some more confirmation that the president doesn't even care about his own soldiers because he thinks they're losers. He thinks these guys are losers, and why would they go fight for this country if there's nothing in it for them? As if fighting for those who believe that when they fight, they are probably maintaining democracy as we hope to have for us all. It's not hard to visualize who this president is. One hopes that as we show this president in these different lights over and over and over again, that like when you get that volume of viruses to infect where it actually really invades, that we somehow at some time get to invade the minds of those who are still fooled, who are still enthralled to this president. Okay, thank you very much. Karen, I got to read what you have to say. I do. These are paid protests, ready to go on moment's notice. This is not about one death. That was just the impetus to start the riots. I am living in a city that is 50% black and white. We do not have the problem I'm seeing. We live in harmony, work and play together, and only problems we have late is by people bust into our cities and wreaking havoc one evening. It was not blacks. It was not Antifa. All they wanted was to destroy, and not once was Floyd mentioned. Then they moved on the next day. You see, Karen, and you know, I have another 4-minute piece that I am not going to play because I just want to spend 1 minute with you, Karen. All those black people in that, the 50-50 black folk, that 50 black, 50% white in your town. The fact that you're telling me that all of you are living in harmony and everything is running very well and nicely tells me how much you don't live your day based on your oppression or how you're treated when you go to the store and you know you're given a second look, or when you go into or when you go to a restaurant you're treated less than, or when you go to the bank you're treated. All those things are internalized, and since you're used to it, you just live in harmony with all of your friends, irrespective of who they are. But it is there. And it is stressful, and it's always there. Even in your community, Ms. Torino, it's there. And that's why I said, if you sat down and had a heart-to-heart talk where people dropped their guards completely, in other words, where I can speak to you knowing that I am not going to be judged, and you can speak to me knowing that you are not going to be judged. If you heard those stories, Ms. Torino, you would not make the statement you've just made, because the statement that you've just made show a complete, and I say this with respect, I really do. It does show a lack of understanding of what's going on in the communities of others. And I ask you, go ahead and get my book, really, and read the entire book. There is even a part there specifically that works for you. I really do. And by the way, I do respect you, and thank you for being here, and thank you for engaging with me. I appreciate that. I really do. What I want you to do, though, is share this in your conservative realm or whatever realm that you are in as well, because that is how, not just talking to the choir, is how we're going to make change. So please, my friend, and by the way, if you feel the need, contact me directly as well, because the fact that you are here, Ms. Torino, means that you are open to a certain kind of discussion. By the way, let's get busy, because I got to get my good friend, well, actually my new good friend. I just met Mr. Arturo Dominguez, okay? So, come on, stop it, Michael Rudnin, stop it. Let's listen to Mr. Dominguez, and then we'll take it on the other side. We're only going to have a short time on the other side, but let's go ahead and move it on. Welcome to another edition of Politics and Random. Berto Willis, your host. I'm here with Arturo Dominguez. Arturo wrote a provocative article that really kind of got me into saying, I've got to speak to this guy. White Latinos don't exist. Wannabes do. First of all, why did you write the article?
Well, the intent was to try to reach out to, you know, the racist element in the Latino community, and particularly my own, you know, as a Cuban, you know, we experience that, we see a lot of it in the Cuban community. And, you know, it's unfortunate. When it comes to addressing racism, I take a pretty direct approach. You know, when I wrote White America Needs to Chill last year, you know, I got similar backlash from, you know, the racist delegation of the white community over there. And, you know, I still get backlash from that article. But, you know, it is what it is, and it needs to be called out. You know, that's how I feel about it. However, as far as the headline goes, man, it's regrettable. In hindsight, I think we would be having a much different conversation if the headline read "Racist Latinos need to chill." You know what I mean? Because it created a context that I didn't anticipate. Uh, and I mean, I guess the blessing in disguise is we're having some deep conversations about a lot of things, including racism in the Latino community. So, my thinking behind whiteness in the Latino community is that, to me, race is a construct built by white supremacy.
Right.
We all know this, right? And that's not to say racism and colorism aren't real, because they are. Racism and color, white folks, I mean, across the board. And when I tried to address the white Latinos in particular, because there's a sense there that, and particularly I tried to address the Latinos that shed their identity for the sake of whiteness, and that's particularly who I was trying to target. I mentioned it, I don't know, 7 times. I said, if you're a Latino who, shed your identity and align yourself with this, bigotry or anti-blackness and stuff like that. I mentioned that 7 times in the article because that's kind of who I was going for.
Well, I mean, the first paragraph, I think, the first paragraph, I think, set the tone. It says, I'm a light-skinned Latino. In effect, you're a Latino who can pass as white. I am not
Right.
white. Whiteness
Right.
is based on skin color. It's a mindset. And I think
Right.
that first 4 sentences says it all. A thought process based on the superiority within American and Western European societies. Whiteness is not welcoming to people like me, despite my looks. My last name doesn't allow me all of the privileges white Americans enjoy. My appearance, however, can sometimes prevent me from being profiled by police.
Right.
That is until they run my plates and or see my name. I'm going to tell you something that was interesting, because just before I read your article, I was cycling with my Colombian friend. He lives close to me, and we were talking, and we're talking in Spanish, and we're doing our thing. And I looked at him, and we happened to get on to the stuff about Latinos, right? And I just looked at him and I said, yes, hermano, but remember this. When you're going around Kingwood, where the place that I live,
Yeah.
you don't talk. It's fine, because as far as they're concerned, you're a white man.
Mm-hmm.
Myself, even though I can speak Spanish without an accent and English without an accent, but immediately folks see who I am.
Right, right.
So we have to understand that. And he kind of looked back and he's like, yeah, I guess so, huh? I guess so. Because like you, he doesn't see himself as white. He sees himself as Latino. So
Right.
neither one of you are the wannabes in the supremacy, which is
Right.
something I thought your article was important in pointing out. In other words, try to be like me. Try to see the world through my eyes. Go ahead,
Right.
Arturo.
And that was kind of the approach I took. And again, because of that headline, I think it just provided a whole different context. And those first 2 paragraphs that you just read, one of the biggest criticisms about the article is those first 2 paragraphs. I've been accused of, comparing, like trying to compare what Latinos have to go through to what Black people have to go through. And some people even accuse me of trying to say that, we go through all the same things. And that's not what I was, trying to say at all. What I was trying to do is point it out to the privileged Latinos like me, that you may think you have it made because of your skin color, but at the end of the day, when you go buy a car, you're going to probably have to pay a bigger down payment, probably going to have a higher interest rate. Finding housing can be problematic, because, I've got into a discussion on Twitter the other day, and I've been in Texas for 30 years now, almost 30 years. And since coming here, the only people I've ever been able to rent a house from were Mexican landlords. Every house that I went to rent, you know, white couples and stuff like that, we were pretty much dismissed right away. You know, we walked out, you know, hey, you know, they show you the house, they go through the motions, but we never get approved for any house ever.
And that is because
that's
of your last name, not because of
sure,
how you
right,
look.
right. And, you know, we deal with things, you know, none of this is to say that what we go through is in any way worse than what black people go through. That is not even up for debate. I mean, when you talk about black people in America, you're talking about 400 or 500 years of systemic oppression that still continues today. It just evolves as we move forward, and a lot of times it's disguised as progress. You know, like the 1994 crime bill. You know, back then, even the black community, the Latino, everybody wanted something done about crime. Everybody thought that the crime bill was going to be a solution. Here we are, you know, decades later, looking back, going, damn, that bill really did some harm. You know, so there's a lot of similarities in what we go through, but you can't compare what we go through with what black people go through.
And you know, it's interesting that you say that, you know, because I think in a lot of ways we are victims of how America decided to define identity, and they did it for a particular purpose. And let me give you an example here. When I walked into America, I came originally from Panama, Central America. When I walked into America, I was assigned immediately several identities, right? I'm from a Latin country, so I am Latino. I have Caribbean roots, so I'm Caribbean. And as far as my look here in America, it seems African American. I actually use the word black for me because that's who I am, a black man. But what's interesting, right, is it creates sort of an ostracization, not only from the white community proper, but from the black community as well. Let me give an example. I have a friend who does Afro-Latino teachings, right? And what she finds there is pushback from all sides. There's a pushback from the Latino side. There's a pushback from the black side. There's a pushback from the white side. And she sits down and she says, you know, it is interesting because by creating that identity Latino in America, it was nothing more than a catch-all where we put everybody else.
Right.
You know, and in putting everybody else as a catch-all, even though America proper is colorized, because America is colorized, Latinidad has an interesting faction because within Latinidad, there is that colorization as well.
Right, right. And then, you know, and then there's the issue of that word, Latinidad. That came up a lot.
Let's hear about that. Yes.
So, you know, a lot of people mentioned how it's, you know, and I actually looked it up because apparently this is a blind spot for me. I wasn't aware that Latinidad had been canceled. So, you know, I looked up some essays last night. I read probably 3 or 4 of them, and all of them were dated last year. So apparently it was canceled last year. And I guess I didn't get the memo. I don't know. But
let me stop you a second. I want to stop you a second here because I don't buy into the cancel thing. Let me tell you what I mean by that. I'm a left-wing liberal, left-wing progressive. I don't buy into the cancel stuff of somehow Latino, Latina is canceled and now it has to be Latinx. If I'm speaking about a woman, I spell Latina. For me, if it's a man, it's Latino. If it's the plurality of it is, I am not going to, because I use Latino, Latinas, and Latinx interchangeably, I'm not going to let that be the debate.
Right, right. And I use them interchangeably too. And I'm with you. I'm leftist. You know, I'm not real big on the cancel culture either. But, you know, when it comes to Latinidad, you know, we've been using the word, you know, in academia and since like in the 80s, you know, early 80s, somewhere in there. And the concept behind it was to try to bring us all in as one, taking, you know, post-colonialism, immigration, you know, and trying to bunch us all into one. And I guess for 20, 25 years or whatever, it was acceptable. But the essays that I read I found them profound because they mentioned how using Latinidad does leave out Afro Latinos and indigenous Latinos and stuff like that. And some people made some good points. So where I'm at now with that, as far as like use it, don't use it, I may not use it just to avoid any more issues with it. But is it a blind spot? I haven't figured that out
Well,
yet.
it's
I'm kind of
definition.
on the fence there.
I think it's definition, right? I
Right.
find what I find a lot of times is, and this is a little bit off topic, Arturo,
Okay.
but I find that a lot of the intellectuals that are looking into word mangling and word progression and all those things, it's like
Right.
they need to go out there in the field and do some work, bringing people together and talking to people and less writing. In other words, you are writing and you're doing other things. I'm doing my show and I'm making sure to interact with people and all of that.
Right.
Some people sit down and just analyze concepts in sort of in the ethos and not in
Right.
where things are reality. I go into the barrio and I start talking about Latinx. Half the barrio doesn't know what Latinx is.
Right. Right. And I guess what you're describing is what I describe as from the street level. Um, you have academia, and
Right.
everybody uses the ivory towers analogy, and they're in their offices analyzing, like you say. But from the street level, it's an entirely different perspective. And
Exactly.
I got into a pretty deep conversation with a couple of academics over the weekend through direct messages on Twitter, and there was really deep discussion there, and there was a lot of understanding, but there was a disconnect between what they see and what we see.
Right.
What you see, like Berto, when you're in your neighborhood, in the real world, and what you're going through isn't what they see. And so a couple of them were interested in possibly collaborating on some things. So maybe that leads to
That is a
positive.
good thing.
Right.
That is a
Right.
very good thing because if they can collaborate, because I mean, the problem as well, Arturo, is the folks who get on MSNBC, ABC, and all these talk shows are the academia, not necessarily that person out there in the field. And even if they bring somebody out of the field, they bring somebody who to them is sort of acceptable to their audience and not
Right.
necessarily acceptable to the community. But the piece that you wrote, you got one person who gave an interesting pushback. I didn't quite understand this article, I'll be quite honest with you, because it seemed to me that he was trying to tell you that it was, and tell me if I misunderstood the article, because to me the tenet of the article was you are this white Latino that
Mhm.
is saying this, shut up, because I don't
Right.
want to hear this from you. And he even gives you his card that shows, well, look, I am not a white Latino, but in my community, these evangelical white parents of mine had me defined as white on my cornet. Did I get that right?
In a sense, yeah. Yeah, that's if you wanted to sum up the entire article, essentially, yeah. And it came from a place of, again, this in the article accused me of equating our, the issues we go through with the black community, and on top of that, it's what you just said, and in some ways, yeah, it may be unfair. Granted, my article is pretty harsh. I'm
Yes.
not going to lie about that. And do I regret it? Yeah, some of it I do. Some of it I do. But the majority of what's in there, in the content of the article, once you look past the headline, it's stuff that needed to be said as far as addressing racism in our community. What the article that we're discussing now, the pushback was, it painted me as being in a, I don't know, in a place of, extreme privilege, um, and essentially like looking down on everyone else.
Right.
And I don't know how people draw these conclusions when, the context of the article, while it was harsh, the message was there and it needed to be said, you
Well, let
know.
me tell.
And
I want to tell you how I saw the article because as the article was sort of personal to me because as a Black Latino, and you being, and I know that you don't necessarily classify yourself as a white Latino, but anybody looks at you just
I
like you
mean,
said. A cop doesn't stop you because you do look like a white guy.
right.
Okay, as a white Latino, what happens then is that I saw that like it's great to see these guys coming out and giving the understanding of what's really going on in the community. And not only that, but also pointing out that within the Latino community itself, we have to take into consideration that we have our issues. And when you talk about stop being mediocre in your article, and you're telling Latinos who, especially white Latinos who, in order to assert their whiteness, support a Donald Trump, I think it's something that needs to be said. It's really a betrayal.
It is.
And I think a betrayal more so than a Black American supporting Donald Trump because one can claim I'm using my status. The other one can say I'm trying to do something. Now the guy in your response brought up the standard phrase in some Mexican tenets I heard about mejorando la raza. I never heard that in Panamanian parlance. I've heard it in Mexican parlance. I don't know if it also exists in Cuban parlance.
No, it's not really something I'm very familiar with. Like you, I've heard it, you know, in the Mexican community and Chicanos and stuff like that. But apparently there's some issues there too that some people are having with, I guess, regarding Mexicans and Chicanos as the beige brigade.
Right.
Yeah, so there's some issues with that statement too. So, you know, in all honesty, when we live in this society has lost their minds, for example,
Yes.
you know, because everybody's looking for something to be mad about. And what I wrote, plenty of people had every right to be mad about it. You know, I didn't understand the differences with the viewpoints on Latinidad. Now I do. I'm learning from that, and I'm moving forward and growing with it. You know, same scenario. With I just lost my train of thought. With the article, it's you know, you're trying to relay a message. We as Latinos, we struggle to be heard, so we push the envelope.
Right.
I pushed it too far with my headline, for one, and there's one paragraph in there that I do regret where I said something about you don't deserve to be a Latino, you don't deserve to call yourself a Latino. A lot of my Black colleagues pointed out to me that making that statement was pretty foul because despite the fact that, you know, like they used Candace Owens as an example, every single one of them did. Like, despite how much we disagree with her and how much of a sellout we think she is, she's still Black. And I was like, well, now you just made me regret that paragraph because it's true. You know, you're still Latino. But
but you regret the paragraph, right? The truth of the matter is, I think when you read these articles, and I think, and that's where I think things get out of hand. Not only with cancel culture, but with also taking things out of context. I think what you're saying within the context of the article is perfect. I mean, when I read the article, I'm going to be frank with you, Arturo. When I read the article, there's nothing in the article. I mean, the article was harsh where you hit white Latinos pretty hard. But
yeah.
The outcomes of what happens with white Latinos and how they are used, just like how Candace is used to hurt Black people in general, is a reality. And it's no less harsh reality than what you wrote. So, I mean, there are a lot of times I always say one thing. When I'm writing blogs and articles, I usually don't write it when I'm upset. But there are some blog articles that I want to write when I'm upset.
Right.
And the reason why is that the true message, I try to cater to who I know the readers are going to be and how they will react to it, which is sometimes not in the best interest of what you're trying to promote.
Right.
You follow what I'm saying? So I
Yeah,
don't
I
know what
do.
context you wrote this article, and I'm going to post this article as well, with your permission, of course.
Sure.
That because I think, in whatever tone you wrote this article, I think it is something that needed to be said within the Latino community. When you see that Donald Trump is going to get, let's say, 30–40% of the Latino population, and even though we know that his policies are diametrically opposed to what is in the best interest of them, and when you find that it is, it is, in your parlance, the wannabes, which is really so true, including with Candace Owens, then
Well,
then
yeah.
then we need to call these folks out, and period. I'm sorry, period.
I mean, you make a valid point, and in the context of like how I came at the article, believe it or not, I wasn't angry when I wrote it. A lot of people probably think I was.
Hmm.
I actually wrote it and left it sitting on my computer overnight, and then came back to it the next morning. Did some final edits, which may have been the mistake. I normally, come at it the next morning, do my final read, and publish.
Right.
For this, I don't know why, but I did do some final edits. I can't speak to what they were. I don't
Right.
remember. But, and then, I sent it over to Latino Rebels, and, and they published it. Yeah, I mean, do I have some regrets about some of the things I said? Yeah, sure. I do. And, I, to the people that I offended, I apologize, because that's just, I didn't anticipate that happening. But with that being said, the discourse surrounding the article is not just about racism now. Now we're talking about racism in the Latino community. We're talking about how Latinidad is exclusionary. We're talking about the perceptions of race, and how it's a construct. And the broader picture for me is, I look at the Latino community, and we're just beautifully every racial color in
Right.
the rainbow. That's what we are. So for us to buy into this notion of race, to me, feels counterproductive for our success moving forward as a community, especially from the American perspective. I try to address racism as it's happening here, because this is what we can control. This is we need to be taking care of Latinos next door, each other, things like that. So when I see a Latino who basically, denounces being Latino, declares itself as white, allies himself with this whiteness, and starts seeping into the white supremacist aspect of it, Marco Rubio. But when I see that, it really, really, really burns my ass. And I guess that's just how I'm just going to have to deal with it and speak out on it, probably in more calmer tone, I guess, because yeah, man, I started some stuff, and I, like I said, I'm glad we're having some of these conversations. I really am. And I think I tweeted this a couple times. I even posted it on Instagram. If I have to take a beating for what I said in the article,
So be it.
if that means we're having these discussions, then by all means, I'll take a beating. I'll take a beating. If I have to be the sacrificial lamb, so be it. And I've been hit in the face with a baseball bat. I'm pretty sure I can handle, some of this stuff. So, yeah, it's been an interesting, and I'll be honest with you, Egberto, it's been very educational, enlightening. Some blind spots that I have, some blind spots that I'm not sure are blind spots. There's a lot of things, to rethink when I'm trying to address race in the Latino community. It's
difficult.
To me, it's such a misnomer that like it shouldn't even apply, but apparently it really does apply to more people than I thought. And when I see people describe themselves as Afro-Latino, I don't see themselves as describing them as a race. I see them just describing them as, an African, partially African part of our culture, of the Latino community. The U.S. sees us as one. We're the Latino vote. Where everything is Latino, Latino, Latino. So a part of me wants us to embrace that and use it for our collective power. And in order for us to really do that, we have to shed the race issue. And if you really want to dismantle race, you go to its core and you start telling people that, look, man, whiteness is bull. Whiteness is in America, whiteness is white supremacy. In Latin America, whiteness is white supremacy. America supports the white supremacist rulers down there. We saw what happened in, was it Honduras or,
Guatemala, Honduras, you name the Central American country.
If an indigenous, somebody with indigenous roots gets in the office, the United States does everything in their power to remove them. And if we can end white supremacy here in America, where we're a collective, and bring that power together, get more people in office, get more people in power, maybe we can, over a couple of generations, change the policy to be more equitable, in Latin America. Because, I don't consider Latin America foreign policy. They're right there. That's not foreign policy. So I think that if we could just somehow embrace something to become unified, and maybe, I guess in a utopian type of thought, eliminate the idea of race altogether in this country.
Arturo Dominguez, that is the closing thought. Thank you so kindly for having been here with Politics Done Right.
Man, I appreciate it. Thank you, Alberto.
I hope you enjoyed that. We're right up at the limit. Let me ask all of my folks here to please remember we are a program that requires your support. Please go to politicsdoneright.com/Patreon. That is politicsdoneright.com/Patreon. You can also support us at PayPal by going to politicsdoneright.com/PayPal. That is politicsdoneright.com/PayPal. You can also support us on Facebook by going to politicsdoneright.com/Facebook, politicsdoneright.com/Facebook. And of course, you can get our books, our teacups, our everything at our store. Visit us at politicsdoneright.com/store, where you can get stuff like our cup that says Politics Done Right. We also have cups that have the squad on. We also have cups that have the I Support Independent Media, T-shirts that say I Support Independent Media, as well as our books, including this book, It's Worth It, How to Talk to Your Right-Wing Relatives, Friends, and Neighbors, as well as our other book, As I See It, Class Warfare, the Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom. And for those of you who know, I've always had my weight problems, and I've solved it. Yes, I've solved my weight problem. Lose weight and be fit now. All of this goes into supporting this program, Politics Done Right. We try to do our part, and we ask you to please be a part of the family. Please be a part of what we do to really change minds. That's the goal, to change minds so that we can start working together in all that we do. Look, I know, and by the way, you can get my book directly at Amazon if you don't want to buy it at my site by going to that link that I just placed on the screen. Or if you go to our website, there are links at our website to get our book as well. My name is Egberto Willies. I want to thank you because you can be anywhere and you're here listening to what we have to talk about. Those of you that left messages, Brie, just as you would think, we all could be humans with each other, but I'm sorry, it doesn't seem to work. They seem so... well, you know what? Let me tell you, Brie, we're going to change. Things are going to change. It is... I got to get out of here, but I just want to say one thing to Brie. Brie, here's the deal. All of these things are what's pushed from the plutocracy, the Powell Manifesto. It's designed to keep us at each other's throats so we don't see that the small percentage on the top are screwing us all. And that's why I take the parlance. If I am fighting other people for whatever reason, I am playing into their games. However, if I can try to bring us all together and us work together against that which oppresses all of us in some form, we win. That's their biggest fear. And that's my goal with Politics Done Right. That's my goal with trying to get a whole of more programs like this out there in the ethos. Again, my name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. And you know how I end this, baby. I am what? Out! Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right.